the ability to then be looking at that data in real time. And while you're putting in your workout, getting those real time notifications about cumulative fluid losses, cumulative electrolyte losses, all that real time data to support the hydration strategy in the moment was really the core of the value proposition.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Meridith Cass, founder and CEO of Nix Biosensors. In this episode, we discuss real-time hydration monitoring. Meridith details the tech behind the company's sweat tracking patch. Plus, she explains why Nix is focused on endurance athletes before expanding into new markets. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by Jack Taylor, our exclusive PR partner. More than just PR, they're creative storytellers and brand builders who actually understand the health and wellness industry. To learn more, head to jacktaylorpr.com/fit. That's FITT. Hi, Meridith. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to chat today. Certainly a lot of, I think, growing interest in hydration, tracking, quantifying, making sure that for athletes especially, but I think kind of across the spectrum, people want to have a better understanding of just what they're putting into their bodies and how that's actually kind of fueling them. So excited for this conversation. Maybe just to kick things off, introduce yourself, tell us about Nix, and then we'll just kind of get into it from there.
Yeah. So it's funny. I come from the venture world. So I've spent most of my career in kind of this intersection between venture capital and venture creation, which is a great perspective to bring into starting a company. So I bring a little bit of that healthcare background, which is where my prior career is in. And then I always hesitate to identify as an athlete when I'm talking to athletes and I'm talking to, the audience is an athletic group, but I did play basketball in college and then switched to running marathons a few years ago. So I've run 9 of those, and it's a pretty cool opportunity to kind of blend the venture capital, venture creation, and athletic side all into one at Nix.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think from that perspective, well, one, definitely college athlete and then staying active puts you in the kind of checks the box of being an athlete for sure. But even now, anybody who's continuing to pursue any type of fitness, exercise, whether it's a habit or, sport or competition or not, like I think, well, one, that audience, that demand for that is growing. And then of course, which kind of I'm sure factored into your thought process for starting the company, like people wanting to understand their body, their data, their, all these different metrics across the board. Was it a background and interest in sports that kind of led you to hydration specifically, or was it even this, you mentioned venture creation, like looking at, hey, how big is the market? What is the problem specifically we're trying to solve? How do we potentially, in this case, blend both of those things? So what was that kind of nugget? And then how did you even start to turn it into a company from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely multifactorial for sure. And I think the biggest influence is the healthcare background. And I've always been, working in that industry for 15, almost 20 years, was always frustrated with the ability to actually get my hands on health data from the patient side or the consumer side. And so that actually is still very much the lofty vision for Nix is putting health and wellness data in the hands of a consumer where they don't have to be unlocking this data through the healthcare system. So that was kind of the primary driver. And then when we think about all of the areas of health and wellness data that a consumer might be really intrigued by, definitely the athletic influence kind of drove to the top this question of hydration. So we always sort of think about it. You asked too, I guess this is a fair point too, is like the venture capitalist in the back of my head is like, think for scale, think for scale. So hydration kind of fulfills that need too, where we think about like the future potential scale when you're managing hydration is absolutely massive, right? It's a fundamental need for humankind. So you're talking about potential total addressable market of like literally every human on earth. But as a super early stage company, we get these very well-defined segments, which of course starts with an athlete, as it often does in this segment, but extending from the endurance athlete to the team sport athlete, to the tactical athlete, to the industrial athlete. There's a natural progression there that our company gets to sort of march down that roadmap with maybe the discipline that was drilled into me as a VC.
Yeah, I think it's important context for sure, but all along that way, there's definitely milestones, right? That you're trying to execute in terms of the ideation. How do we bring this to market? Product development, in this case, when you're talking about something that is actually on people's bodies. Um, yeah, I guess if somebody's not familiar, could you describe just like the product and how somebody's interacting with it, and then maybe even what that you hope that they're able to then do with that information and that reading?
Yeah, completely. And maybe I'll even take advantage of the fact that we're on video here. So we've got these two sort of physical components to our product. What we call the pod, which is a small, simple electronic component that's probably smaller than your watch face on your smartwatch. And then a completely disposable patch that's totally non invasive. So it kind of functions just like a high tech band aid, no needles or anything like that. So you literally pair these together, you get a nice little click, pull that sort of backing off the back, just like a Band-Aid. And you can see the bottom of the patch there. We've got like a flow path and some simple electronics. And then you just literally drop that right onto the body. We do like the arm. I can get into sort of why that's of interest as opposed to any other place on the body. But the ability to then be looking at that data in real time. And while you're putting in your workout, um, getting those real time notifications about cumulative fluid losses, cumulative electrolyte losses. You can set custom notifications for intervals of your choosing. To me, that all that real time data to support the hydration strategy in the moment was really the core of the value proposition. The extension, of course, is then you've got historical data that you're capturing with all this environmental data, because that has everything to do with your sweat profile, is the environment that you're operating in. And then all of that then drives the third value proposition, which is the predictive model. So that when you're going into a future workout or race or whatever it is, you've got data supporting what your needs might be on that day.
Yeah, super interesting. And it's obviously, and I want to talk about the hydration and even the data and predictive aspect too, but it's always when you're thinking about another maybe metric and then another device and then another display, the creating this whatever the hardware, in this case in the patch and the sensors, versus integrating versus trying to then make this something that people can you know we want them to tune in and be kind of tapped into it, not 24/7 in this case, but certainly when you're training or if you're at work or whatever the use case is. What considerations went into that when you set out to kind of solve this problem? Was it, hey, do we have to develop something new? Can we figure out how to create a sensor that goes on a smartwatch? And do you foresee that being a possibility in the future versus kind of like this standalone patch as it is now?
Yeah, I mean, we thought about every possible iteration. I mean, everything we did really stemmed first from the fact of like, can hydration even be sensed through sweat? Or does it need to be through galvanic skin response or optical impedance or, any other type of sensing method? I mean, that really was the intent, is like, if we knew we wanted to solve the problem of hydration management in the beginning for an athlete and extending to other populations, what is technically the right way to do it? What's the right sensing method? And so that was where everything stemmed from. And we very quickly narrowed it down, like, should it be something fluid based, sweat, saliva, something like that, urine? I mean, that is kind of the gold standard now as people are trying to use urine tests for it. So is it something in that direction, or is it like an optical sensor? And the benefits of an optical sensor is it's all algorithmic. I mean, we'd have to still build that sensor or leverage somebody else's to get that data, the raw data, and build our algorithms. But then the benefit could be that you could just then license that to Apple and Whoop and Garmin and anybody that already has a piece of hardware. The challenge is nobody's been able to get that to work. So Apple's been working on it for decades. They filed ungodly amounts of patents around it, have never launched it. There's a reason for that. So we took a look at that and we were like, that's probably not the right way to go. Like, it's got to be accurate first and foremost. So when we sort of made the decision, like, it's got to be a true biomarker that can actually be measured. And when I say true biomarker, I mean like molecular biomarkers, electrochemical markers. Digital markers are a little bit different. We could spend a whole different podcast debating the validity of digital biomarkers, but that was really the path that we took. And then from that point on, everything was about integration. How do we make sure it's still something that can be integrated on the physical product level, on a software level? We've got, I think, 3 or 4 of those integrations already underway. We've got a sort of pipeline of another 6 integrations we want to do from a software perspective. So that was really the intent, is never to be like the new wearable that replaces all other wearables, and also never to be something that has to stand on its own for the rest of time.
Yeah, really smart with thinking through it that way. It's always been so as an athlete growing up playing football, played football in college, which is a much different sport than an endurance athlete, which I then later got into triathlon, ultra marathon, all long distance racing. And as you can imagine, that's a huge leap for me, where everything we're thinking about, we're taking breaks every few plays, timeouts, being on the sideline, getting a chance to rehydrate when doing that in real time on a bike as an endurance athlete, right? And hoping that I prepared enough or had enough tabs and mixes and gels on me to know along the way. And oh, by the way, remember to consume them and do that in a timely fashion. But it was still this idea that I was guessing the whole time. I was, maybe I got it right, maybe I didn't. If I did, I there was no way to really tell that I did, other than I didn't totally hit a wall. So the idea of looking down at my watch, or ideally getting a notification that says now do this thing, is ideal. How close is that reality for an athlete? Not only with hydration being one piece, and you kind of maybe alluded to this. So, a loaded question potentially. You said starting with hydration before getting into other aspects. I guess how realistic is it that I'm going through a race or any type of competition, and all along the way, I'm getting my dialed in, personalized drink this at this time, ensuring that I'm at my kind of peak performance?
100%. That is literally how we built it. So when we incorporated all of the feedback, again, initially from endurance athletes while we were building the thing, far and away, the thing that we heard was exactly what you just described. As people said, just tell me what to do and when to do it with respect to hydration. And so that is literally how we built it. It's always been a complaint of mine from the consumer side that wearables aren't always intuitive, or they give you these really beautiful, fancy metrics, but you don't know what to do with them. We went completely the opposite way. We were like, if we can't literally say, do this now, it's not going to be helpful and it's not going to scale. So that's what it does. Literally, whether you're getting the data on your Apple Watch or your Garmin watch or your bike computer, it's literally going to show you your cumulative losses as you're going through the workout. And then you can set, as a runner, I like to get a notification like every 4 ounces. So I'm just kind of titrating that fluid in instead of hitting a point where I've got to drink 20 ounces. That's not as feasible. As a cyclist, somebody might prefer to set it to like, a 22-ounce bottle so that they're getting the notification each time they should be progressing onto their next bottle and keeping pace that way. But that's how we've built it. I mean, that is literally like coach in your ear, drink now before you've gone to the workout. We've already told you what your sweat composition was and told you which beverage was probably best suited for you. So you could either pick that drink or mix your own custom beverage and enter that into the app. So that's literally how we do it. I will say we do find a good portion of our users, when we look at all the analytics on the back end, actually still prefer to go by feel in the moment, but they're capturing the data, analyzing it at the end, and then leveraging it for the next workout. So really, it's just a matter of preference.
Yeah, there is this idea of kind of the real time notifications and making sure that you're getting it, and whether or not you go on field. But there's also this aspect, and more recently over the last, call it 5 years, that glucose monitoring, right, is coming into, especially among athletes and beyond diabetes management, for the same idea. Am I fueled enough for this competition? And I think with respect to athletics and especially endurance sports, it's super relevant, and you can do it and need it, that management in real time. Same thing for the fueling aspect. But in general, among like a, call it health minded but still healthy population, you kind of run into this problem of, you wear it, you get a sense for, oh, these things spike my blood sugar at these times. Maybe I'll avoid that and kind of dial it in. And then you maybe stop using it. It's a little bit different, I think, with respect to hydration, because the elements change, right? It can be weather, it can be heat, it can be a whole number of things. Have you seen, or have you built it with the idea that maybe people aren't using it every time they're training or every race? Is there a certain kind of number of times that you do recommend, or that you even see people have used it to be most effective?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for any product in this category, it's natural to have some attrition. The key is always like, does the use case match the price point and the motivation to keep going? And so To your point, I mean, in the hydration category, there's so many factors that are going to change your sweat rate from one day to the next. And then this is maybe a lesser known fact is that when your sweat rate changes, so does the composition of your sweat. So if you're thinking about like what's the right, volume of fluid to consume per hour and volume of electrolytes to consume per hour, it is actually different every day. So we do have the physiology on our side, kind of supporting the need for continuing to use the product. The reality, of course, is that we don't assume, even if you're a runner that's running 4 times a week, we don't assume you're going to wear it all of those 4 times per week. And it's probably not yet priced at a point. Like as we scale, the price can come down. But today, we have some super users that are using it maybe three, four
Yeah.
times a week, but most people are using it once a week on like their long run or their long ride on the weekend. What I'm super encouraged by is that we see a lot of people using it again, either Saturday or Sunday for their long run, long ride, but also using it again on Tuesday, which is typical, or Wednesday, which is typically their speed work day. So it tells me that people are already intuitively using it for those two different types of workouts where they would expect their sweat rates to be different. And of course, we can see all the data on the back end. They are very different. And being able to sort of compare and contrast that way. We've also seen people sort of I guess, saving their use cases for particularly hot days, which is natural when you're thinking about dehydration, or saving it for while they're actually training for something meaningful. But other than that, it's really all over the map. We'll see, like in our, different use cases, we'll see people buy an entire training bundle up front where they're buying 4 months worth of patches to, gear up for their marathon. Or we'll see people, we just launched a couple months ago our subscribe and save model where we auto ship the patches as refills to people. So some people are saying, ship me one of these a month. We have a couple people that are saying, ship me 4 of these a month. So it's really all over the map.
Yeah, I can see that too, especially the aha moment that comes when you look at the maybe like a tempo and speed workout day versus a long run day and uh, probably maybe weren't taking that into consideration the first
Yeah.
time around. So even the opportunity you mentioned too, like kind of democratizing data, that even having the ability to get your hands on that to become more informed is a huge kind of step forward. Um, you mentioned recommending maybe the types of drinks and being able to set the app. At this point, are you able to kind of distinguish between different electrolytes, different levels of what should be in that drink for each individual user? And another thing that came to mind when you mentioned that is one, it's important to get the right mixture at the right time, but also a lot of times what you see for whether it's urine tests or some at home blood tests or saliva tests, like they want to measure that thing and then they want to sell you their supplement or their mix or their drink. Do you have aspirations down that path, understanding that? Or is it more you just want to recommend the right thing at the right time?
I think to take the second part first, I think maybe a hangover from my venture days is like there's always that concept of like, do you build, buy, or partner? Those are like all the different. Those are kind of the three core ways that you can add capability. Do you build it yourself? Do you acquire it from someone else, or do you partner slash license it? Our philosophy in general, just to stay lean and efficient, is partner. We're not trying to build anything that people have already built. There's no benefit to that. We're too small to be acquiring other companies at this stage in our life, although maybe someday soon. So I think, our thought process is if there's a natural connection between our data and a personalized hydration formula, which sort of a natural progression, natural sort of thought process there. Our thought is let's partner on that. The thing that's really important to us, and maybe a lesson that we tried to learn from Gatorade's launch, is we don't want to be tied to any one brand. The integrity of our data is too important. We need to stay brand agnostic. So if we do partner, we're going to do it non-exclusively. But it really is about like the data that we've captured off your body. We're going to feed back to you and make a personalized recommendation to you. And if the data that we're collecting points in the direction of a brand that you're not into for whatever reason, we're going to give you a calculator so that you know exactly how to mix the recipe of the brand you do want to use. And so we really feel like everything we've done is about meeting the user where they are on the platform that they're using, with the products that they like to use, integrating into their routine instead of forcing them into ours.
Hey everyone, we'll get back to the show in just a second. But first, I wanted to tell you about our exclusive PR partner, Jack Taylor. Honestly, this one's a no brainer. We've known the Jack Taylor team for years. They work with some of the most innovative health and wellness companies. We're talking Whoop, Athletic Greens, Hyperice, and many more. Jack Taylor has an extensive industry network, knows how to work with high growth companies, and really invests in building long term relationships. I know this firsthand because they're Fit Insider's PR agency, so I can confidently recommend them, and I do all the time. From startups to more established brands, they go beyond pushing product to help companies truly thrive. To learn more, head to jacktaylorpr.com/fit. That's FITT. Now back to the show. Yeah, I think it's important, especially as you've said it a couple of times now. Well, one, thinking about scale, and two, thinking about being a lean and early stage team, which from the outside looking in, it definitely seems as though you've maintained that kind of laser focus, very execution. Hey, let's do this thing. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's continue to make sure we're checking the boxes as
It's
we
so
go.
hard.
Yeah. And even at this point, how many years has it been? How big is the team? Anything that you would kind of to characterize the stage beyond just like early stage?
Yeah, I mean, so we're about 10 people core team. We've got a much broader team than that when we think about contractors and fractional folks. We've been at it on this platform for about 4.5 years, so a good amount of time. And that part about discipline, I mean, that's just like resonating so strongly right now. Like even right now, we are only marketing to endurance athletes. We've built the product for that athlete. We've packaged it that way. We've priced it that way. I mean, everything has been with the endurance athlete in mind, being as disciplined as we can. And the irony is, we now have people coming to our website who we don't even know how they're finding us. We have been really blessed to get some good PR. And so maybe that's part of it. But we've got people coming to the website from the military, from the NBA, from the NHL, from the NFL, from collegiate sports, from national governing bodies of different, Olympic sports. All of these segments that are decidedly not our target customer at the moment. And we're trying to figure out how do we service them and get excited about partnering with them when everything we've done has been with the endurance athlete in mind. And there's no good answer to that except just to say, we're building those relationships. We're doing a lot of collaborative research. You guys are going to start to see that populating our website. We've gotten a lot of feedback. People want to see more of the data. So all of that will start propagating, but it's tough with a small team to be really disciplined when, the opportunities are somewhat endless right now.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have,
Yeah.
definitely. And
Champagne
figuring
problem.
out, yeah, how to deal with that. And there's also this element of even going beyond the individual, which endurance sports is primarily, right? It's that one person who's doing an event, or, maybe I don't know if it's a kind of governing body or USA Track and Field or USA Cycling, whatever it is. But if not, it's one person that you're trying to sign up. But then you look at the military or, team sports, for example, coming in and potentially buying a whole lot more sensors than one individual is going to, and want to understand how to manage that across the team. So yeah, there's definitely going to be different problems to solve with those use cases. But ultimately it's like this idea, and we've seen it a couple times, even more recently. Like you have a company like Hyperice that is talking about recovery and all these different things specifically for an athlete. And then all of a sudden, you have regular Joe and Jane who are like, oh, I need this massage gun, foam rolling, all these things that were kind of trickled down from that athlete class. So hydration is much more necessary and ubiquitous. We're already doing it, and a lot of people aren't drinking enough fluids. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of same path evolves. When do you have when you think about these different audiences, and even beyond kind of an operator athlete class of folks, what this looks like for just kind of everyday person? Does it get to that point where we want to tackle that? And what does that maybe vision look like getting there?
Yeah, I think without question. I think it's, there's always the question of, I hate the phrase low hanging fruit, but it's real, right? Like, where's the right place to start? Get your feet wet, validate your approach, build your brand, get some brand awareness up. For obvious reasons, we wanted to start with the athlete. And there are actually a lot of reasons why we like the endurance space, even more than the team sports space that we can come back to. But I think there's a massive opportunity to be thinking about tracking hydration in the general population. Obviously, that's what investors want to see too, is a progression in that type of scale. There are some, to be totally candid, there's some R&D optimizations that need to happen before that's the case. And in my opinion, there are some market adjustments that need to be made. I think the general consumer is still coming around to wearing a wearable all day, every day that isn't just a Fitbit, which, in my opinion, could not be more different from, this category of biosensing, which I would consider us a member of, and Super Sapiens and Levels and all these guys that are, again, tracking like true molecular or electrochemical data. So I think there's a path there. My vision is it's probably 5 years out before the general consumer, thinks about adopting it in scale. And as I'm saying that out loud, I mean, we get emails every day from people that have diabetes or heart failure or kidney stones, or women that are pregnant, and people that have such a higher need for monitoring their hydration. We get emails from people with sickle cell trait, where hydration is apparently a major, sort of cause in a sickling event or what they call a pain crisis. So we get these inquiries constantly that, again, we're having to be disciplined about, but just thinking about how do we also think strategically about what are the milestones our company needs to hit to unlock that next inflection point, that next round of funding, whatever it might be, to then be able to go and invest in that next segment.
Yeah, no, we're right back to the discipline point, which is like doing the things that are in front of
Oh,
us
it's
now,
so
despite
hard.
the interest and opportunities.
Yeah.
I did want to come back to, you mentioned why you've chosen to, or also the benefit of focusing on endurance athletes, and I wanted to do that, get your perspective on that, because we see a ton of companies that are specifically coming through with this, whether it's an athlete, endurance athlete, and having their, the obvious reasons why they're drawn to that space, right? They if they get 1% better, then they're going to pay for the thing, and it's going to incentivize them to do it. And if they perfect it with this audience, they'll be able to market kind of downstream, and they'll have that appeal. Maybe they can win over some of those athletes as endorsers or investors or advocates. So from your perspective, why is it that, you said you've seen kind of the benefit of focusing on the endurance athlete, at least to start?
Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons. That some of the top ones are around, first of all, unmet need, in the sense that I feel when we did our research, the endurance athlete really felt the pain point more poignantly around hydration management and the challenges of it, than other types of segments. In the sense that, I think in our initial market research, some obscene percentage of endurance athletes had experienced personally a dehydration event and was very painfully aware of the connection between dehydration, even at a mild level, and a performance impairment. And I think this endurance athlete group, understands that performance impairment is not necessarily like a 1 or 2% edge that they're trying to get. I mean, we're talking like 20 to 30% performance impairment and mild levels of dehydration. So that group, in my opinion, understood the need case first and foremost. It's also a super routine and superstitious group. So they do the same thing every week, week in, week out. They've always got a race on the calendar. They also congregate in predictable places, both physically and digitally, which from a marketing perspective makes things a lot easier. There are a lot of brands we can partner with. The influencers are less expensive to partner with. There's like so many reasons. And the one that I think usually baffles people, and candidly, this has hurt us sometimes when we've been fundraising, is running cycling and triathlon, which is how we define endurance, can sound really niche. But if you're somebody that knows the space, it is massive. I mean, it's like 60 million people in this country, which is like a fifth of the population. It's absolutely massive. In fact, it dwarfs all team sports combined. So we don't always think about that because running and triathlon, like they're not as sexy in this country as like we think NBA and NFL, and we can't argue with that. Those things are real. But when we think about that segment as compared to team sports, with a hydration sensor, if you want to sell to, let's say, the mom of a youth soccer player and the strength and conditioning coach of the New England Patriots, two totally different marketing campaigns, two totally different motivators, two completely different decision makers. So if we did it that way, we'd actually have to bite off like sport by sport, or level of competition by level of competition. And so we figured let's get in there, let's nail it with endurance sports. If something can work for a full Ironman triathlete, it can trickle down. And we're finding that we're able to parallel path a lot of it. Like I was saying earlier, we are partnered with MLB teams and NHL teams and NFL teams. So we're kind of doing that in parallel, even while we're still commercially addressed and focused on the endurance segment.
Yeah, it's super smart. And all those points, I think, are super valuable for other operators who are thinking about this space. When you were initially conceiving of the company and now I'm, raising money then or now, is it still, do you still run into that same thought that, this market isn't very big, endurance sports isn't big enough? Is there a lot of education that needs to go into that? Or is it, I feel like to some extent, a couple factors that might play in your favor is like, for whatever reason, a lot of kind of executives, investors, they're into endurance sports. They geek out over this stuff. They geek out over the technology. And so some get it. But is it kind of that pushback that like, no, this isn't big enough? It's not, the same as like a team sport, for example.
I mean, you literally just nailed exactly what I was going to say. There's a huge confluence of people in investing in whatever capacity, whether it's traditional institutional investing like VC or corporate strategic or even just high net worth individuals. Huge overlap between that individual and the endurance space. It's just natural. A lot of type A people that happen to have a little extra discretionary income, you can't keep them away from like triathlon and cycling, especially, but running also. So there is pretty good overlap. But yeah, we'll always get an investor that will push back and say, oh, like it sounds really niche. And either maybe they're not an endurance athlete, or every once in a while, we'll get folks that really want to push us faster toward like the laborer segment. They really want to get in on like the enterprise B&B side. And I think they know some of the challenges inherent in team sports is like, it can be so enticing to want to sell to like NFL players, but there's 2,000 of them. That's not a market. So when you think about that, and then we all think about the military as like this massive opportunity, and the military is actually a lot smaller than most of us think it is. It's just that obviously DoD is pretty price insensitive. So it is an awesome opportunity. But we do have investors really just being like, when are you going to get to the laborer segment? And my answer to that is A, we are doing it already. We're doing all kinds of pilots in that segment already and building our product to optimize in that direction. But that segment still needs a little maturation. Like they're not the low hanging fruit that a runner is, who's like, oh man, I just did my long run on Saturday and I hit the wall. And like, you should see what our sales look like on the weekends. Like we can tell when people get home from their long runs, it's like they're coming to our website. So, there's a real distinction between like, the early adopters on the laborer side or like glass blowing factories, oil and gas, people that are in more extreme environments. It's not going to be quite as commonplace as it will be for endurance.
Sure. And they're also not going anywhere, that those markets. So the opportunity is going to be there and you'll be ideally better equipped when you do get there. As we fast forward, maybe look ahead a little bit, already we've talked about kind of bringing this to those broader markets and understanding and educating and giving people the data to make these kind of more informed decisions. And yes, in the meantime, being disciplined about getting there. Is there anything on the roadmap, maybe more in the near term that you're excited about or we should look out for as it relates to kind of this core audience of endurance athletes?
Yeah, we have so much stuff in the works that I'm excited about that hopefully you won't have to wait too long to hear about some of those announcements coming in the next couple of weeks. But they center mostly around some really exciting partnerships that we're really proud of. There's always the, pro athlete teams that we're working out with. And I even mean that on the endurance side, but we've got some product updates too coming that we are really excited about. We opted candidly to go to market quickly and get feedback at scale as opposed to keeping like a tight closed beta and learning those details about the product more slowly. So we've had incredible insights from people who have purchased and tried the product, from people who haven't and about the reasons why they haven't, and from, super users about the features they want to see. So keep an eye out. We've got some big stuff coming in the next few weeks.
Yeah. And I did want to mention too, it has seemed like the whether it was intentional or not, going to market, being willing to, be receptive to that feedback, it sure seems like it's won a lot of people in the broader endurance community over, who are huge fans. And whether or not, you have the data, super users or how much they're using, but just this idea that they're contributing to and in some ways helping build this thing. Was that, you mentioned wanting to be kind of in market? Was it for that, I don't know, community led feedback reason? Or was it like, hey, we just need the data and the input, not even from a marketing perspective, but from like a product development perspective? And it just happened to be beneficial marketing wise too. Was that, I guess, was it thought out ahead of time, or was it just kind of like, beneficial after the fact?
I would say it was thought out a little bit. I mean, we definitely had the perspective of like, should we take, 3 more months and really put this through another structured beta and like make sure it's really buttoned up? Or like, should we just let it fly and let the market tell us? And, we're entrepreneurs in general, like we're a risk tolerant bunch. But I think we opted for that partly because of the other reason you mentioned, which is like, what better way to learn than to put this thing in the wild? I mean, we have all the analytics on the app. We know exactly how, when, and in what conditions people are logging workouts. We've got data coming out of our ears now. It's such a velocity that we never would have had if we'd waited. But there's vulnerability in that, right? We launched with a couple bugs in our app. This is like, first of all, every software product has bugs. But secondly, like, nobody wants to launch until they're perfect, but perfect's not a thing. So, our hope was that our story, our product, and our value proposition were unique enough that as a sort of first in class with this sort of connected real-time hydration data, that people would be somewhat forgiving if the product wasn't perfect. And while of course there's always people that are a little frustrated with any bumps along the way, over it all, I think that's really been true. I mean, we've been able to engage athletes at all levels, coaches, influencers, to really sort of engage with them and the athletes they coach to give us feedback and say, what's working for you? What features do you need? And some things that we probably would have picked up in beta, like didn't occur to us ahead of time, that if somebody's putting in a brick workout, they need to be able to mark, like, I just switched from my bike to my run without stopping the workout, which is like, oh yeah, we would have picked that up. But I think again, we've just been so lucky that people are so excited that this true unmet need is now being addressed, that they've been really helpful and really excited.
Yeah, I think ultimately it ends up reading and coming across is that not only you invested in the space for this user, but you're accessible as well, which is a lot of times you have a brand that's like, you wouldn't even know who to talk to if you could. And if you did, they probably wouldn't listen. So, you have those things on your side. And I think in this conversation too, certainly a lot of people who are now, if they haven't already, kind of wondering, oh yeah, this definitely sounds like something I could use or would be interested in trying. What's the best place to learn more, get started with Nix?
Yeah, our website has all kinds of information, not just about the product, of course, but also just about the physiology of thermoregulation. So you can get educated on kind of what that process looks like. And if, get all sorts of information about the product as well. So that's nixbiosensors.com.
That's awesome. We'll have everything linked up and certainly encourage people to check it out. But really glad we had a chance to chat today. Super interesting conversation. So thanks for stopping by.
No, thanks for having me. This was great.
One more thing before you head out, help us spread the word. Take a minute to rate and review the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or share this episode with a friend. And if you like conversations like this, you'll love the Fit Insider newsletter. We send it every Tuesday. The link is in the description. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week.